welcome, Gillian. It's amazing to have you here. Gillian, I was just sketching how eventful everything has been, right? We know that we have these ambitious targets that we still need to meet, but we also know that these past few weeks, if only, just have been very eventful, both in terms of international security, energy, climate policy. Amidst all these sorts of developments that we see, how do you still, are you still optimistic and hopeful about us being able to meet those targets that we've set?
I'm optimistic because we have to be sure that those of us who have decided on a journey of decarbonisation, of whatever type, whether it's decarbonisation of our energy, whether it's decarbonisation of our land use and whatever, we know this is a long-term thing. We need to stay the course.
Right.
So things happen in the global arena that we can't control.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that gives us all the more reason to stick to our guns, and follow in that trajectory. My government has had the policy that we want to decarbonise for many, many years, and we've been working towards this goal. It's one of the reasons why we're one of the major renewable energy producers in the UK and indeed Europe, is because we've had that certainty. And I would say that the global uncertainty at the moment gives us an extra reason why we have to stay the course in this. Things are going to change. Things are going to change that we can't control. We obviously want to protect ourselves in terms of energy security.
Right.
We still feel, although that we're not EU members anymore, unfortunately, Scotland still feels very European, and we feel very aligned and connected to Europe.
Yeah.
And I think that if we stick together and we have a synergy of policy in terms of decarbonising, and we challenge each other, but we work together on the solutions,
that we can
then we will
sort of
stay
lead
the
way.
course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an existential issue that we're facing here. It's climate change, but it's also energy security as well.
Yeah, it's very broad, and I love how you say the way to sort of overcome that is through cohesion. It's through sort of like feeling that connection all together. Do you still though feel like, even when we look at like sort of overall Europe, do we make it enough of a top priority to say we're gonna achieve net zero?
I think we need to be very careful that we don't just say we're going to achieve net zero on its own sake.
Right.
We are going to achieve net zero because of what it is going to bring in terms of prosperity to the nations of the EU,
Yeah.
in terms of the jobs, in terms of the potential for our citizens to have a lower cost of living. And what we're going to do in terms of, I think, the health and well-being of our citizens as well. And I think we need to be able to, sometimes I think when we say net zero, we don't put it in context enough for people.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't need to tell anyone in Berlin that we have voices in politics who are from the far right in particular, and we have those similar voices in the UK and obviously in other countries as well, who want to say net zero is a scam or a hoax, or it's been done for nefarious reasons.
Yeah.
We need to be able to articulate why getting to net zero is important to every single one of our citizens. And until we can do that, we're floundering around. Now, I understand why we have to go to net zero. Everyone who comes to a conference like this understands.
Yeah, but it's about also being able to translate that messaging.
We have to translate that to people. Why is this going to be good for you? What difference, what positive difference is this going to make in your life and your children's lives?
Yeah. And you know what? I think even people here at BTD, of course, we have a room full of front runners here, right? We have a conference full of front runners. At the same time, I think even then it's so fundamental that we don't forget to ask that why question, right? Yeah. Because it also allows us, as a community, we do this work every day, but to sort of get back to that intentionality. What is it really that we're doing this for? So maybe if we can make that specific, if we look at the country case of Scotland specifically, you guys are pioneers when it comes to offshore wind, floating wind, tidal energy in that sense. I always say the best lessons are the lessons that we learn from each other. What would you say are some of the lessons that Scotland has learned from your specific pioneering position that would be worthwhile sharing with everyone here?
I think you maybe go back to what I said at the beginning, is that the reason why, and I love that you've called us a pioneer, and I love that, and I'm going to take that and I'm going to quote that, because that makes me feel good about what we've done.
Yeah.
Certainty. We do not waver from our position.
Oh, wow.
Right? So we actually have an existential issue in terms of our energy supply in the UK. We're an oil and gas producing nation in Scotland, but we know we have passed the peak.
Yeah.
right? So even if climate change weren't an issue, it is an issue, but even if it weren't, we would be having to look to other alternatives to burning fossil fuels in order to have energy security.
Yeah.
So it's an energy security issue for us to diversify and to go into renewable energy, but it's also an economic issue for jobs and for the livelihoods and the prosperity of the people that I represent.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that businesses and people who invest in things always want is certainty.
Right.
And we live in a very uncertain world, as we've just said. So where you can give certainty,
it is like
you
gold.
must.
Yeah, I
That's
love how you say
dust.
that. Yeah, indeed, it is gold dust, and it's also. I mean, at this point, we know that we need to make this transition for so many reasons, and of course, climate is a very apparent one. But we also know how fundamental it is to security and so many other things. You specifically mentioned jobs. That's one final question I wanted to tap upon, because one thing that I have heard being repeatedly mentioned at this BETD is how fundamentally important it is that we sort of like pay attention to transitioning sort of traditional workers in fossil fuel sectors right now to be able to help us upskill, the labor force that we need for the renewable energy sector. What would you say are some of the most important changes that we need to make there in order to allow that transition to happen?
I obviously don't have time to go through one of the many answers that would be to that, because this is a bit of a pet subject for me, because I come from Aberdeen, which is oil and gas area of Scotland, and it's something that really drives me. So I come from a family for which there was not a just transition. My father was an engineer in shipbuilding in Clydeside in the 1960s and 70s. They shut down, there was no alternatives.
Right.
My father took us to Aberdeen, worked in the oil and gas industry. Many of his friends never worked again. And the place that he came from does not look like a prosperous place. It still bears the scars.
Yeah.
So this is a really important thing for me. So what I think we've got to do is we've got to recognise our strengths. We have people working in Scotland, and we have people working in fossil fuel economy right now who are highly skilled and have solutions and want to continue working in the energy sector. So what we need to be able to do is to recognise those skills, and where these skills have gaps, that's where governments have to be able to intervene to make it easy for them to upskill so they can transfer.
Transition.
Because they're the reason why we are investable, the people that are already working in the traditional industries.
I love how you say that, and thank you so much also for sharing the personal link that has for you specifically. Miss Gillian Martin, can we give her a big round of applause, everyone? Thank you so much for sharing that perspective.